The night security cameras captured something impossible. A massive African elephant walking alone through the city streets at 4 a.m. She seemed to know exactly where she was going by morning. The entire world would understand her heartbreaking mission. The relationship between Maya and David Chen began 31 years ago. On a dusty afternoon in Thailand, David was a young animal trainer fresh out of veterinary school, idealistic and determined to change how circus animals were treated. Maya was just 3 years old, orphaned after poachers killed her mother, and terrified of humans. The Ringling brothers had acquired Maya through questionable channels, and she arrived at their training facility traumatized and aggressive. Previous trainers had tried force and intimidation, but Maya would charge at anyone who approached her enclosure. She'd already injured the handlers, and management was considering selling her to a less reputable operation. That's when David volunteered to work with her. His approach was revolutionary for 1992. Instead of dominance and punishment, David used patience, consistency, and genuine affection. He spent hours sitting outside Maya's enclosure, reading veterinary journals aloud, letting her get used to his voice and presence. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Maya had been refusing food for 2 days, a dangerous situation for a young elephant. David entered her enclosure slowly, carrying a bucket of her favorite fruits. Instead of throwing the food and retreating, he sat down in the center of the space and waited. Maya approached cautiously, her trunk extending toward him in tentative exploration. When she gently touched his shoulder with the tip of her trunk, David felt tears in his eyes. It was the beginning of a bond that would span 3 decades. David revolutionized Maya's training using positive reinforcement and building trust rather than fear. Maya learned quickly, not because she was forced to, but because she wanted to please David. Their performances became legendary, not for the spectacle, but for the obvious love and respect between trainer and elephant. As Maya grew to her full size of nearly 8,000 pounds, she became the star of the circus, but more importantly to David, she became his closest companion. He spent more time with Maya than with any human in his life. They had their own language of gestures and sounds, their own routines and rituals. Maya seemed to understand David's moods and emotions with an uncanny accuracy. When David was stressed, Maya would gently place her trunk on his shoulder. When he was sad, she would rest her massive head against his chest. When he was excited about a new training routine, Maya's enthusiasm would match his own. The circus became their world. They traveled together across North America, performing in hundreds of cities. David slept in a trailer next to Maya's transport car, and every morning began with their reunion. Maya's rumbling greeting and David's gentle words of affection. But as the years passed, the circus industry began to change. Public opinion shifted against animal performances. Protests became more frequent. Cities started banning circus acts with elephants. The ethical questions that David had initially tried to address from within the system became impossible to ignore. David found himself torn between his love for Maya and his growing belief that elephants belonged in the wild, not under the big top. He began working with elephant sanctuaries, hoping to find Maya a retirement home where she could live more naturally. But Maya was 43 years old, had never lived with other elephants, and had known only human companionship for her entire life. The internal conflict consumed David. He dedicated his life to giving Maya the best possible existence within captivity. But was that enough? As protesters gathered outside their performances, David couldn't shake the feeling that he'd become part of a system he'd originally intended to reform. The headaches started gradually. David initially attributed them to stress and the constant travel schedule. At 54, he'd been working with circus animals for over 30 years, and the physical demands of the job were taking their toll. But when the headaches became severe enough to interfere with his work with Maya, he finally sought medical attention. Dr. Sarah Williams at Johns Hopkins Hospital had seen the skin results. Before David arrived for his appointment, the tumor was unmistakable, a glioblastoma, aggressive and inoperable. At best, David had 6 months to live. More realistically, they were looking at 8 to 12 weeks. "I need to ask you about your living situation," Dr. Williams said gently after delivering the diagnosis. "Do you have family, support systems?" David's laugh was bitter. "I live in a trailer next to a circus elephant. She's the closest thing to family I have." Dr. Williams had worked with terminal patients for 15 years, but David's situation was unique. His entire life revolved around caring for Maya. The elephant depended on him not just for training and performance, but for companionship and emotional support. What will happen to her when David couldn't finish the sentence? "That's something we need to discuss with the circus management," Dr. Williams replied. "But right now, we need to focus on your treatment options and making you as comfortable as possible." The chemotherapy and radiation were brutal. David tried to maintain his routine with Maya, but the treatments left him weak and nauseous. Maya seemed to sense something was wrong immediately. She became more protective, more attentive. During training sessions, she would frequently check on David with gentle touches of her trunk. The circus management was sympathetic but practical. David had trained several backup handlers over the years, and Maya worked reasonably well with them. But everyone could see that the elephant was stressed by the changes in David's behavior and routine. Dr. James Harrison, the circus veterinarian, had worked with David for over a decade. He noticed the changes in Maya's behavior immediately. "She knows," he told David during one of their weekly check-ins. "Elephants are incredibly sensitive to illness and emotional distress. She can probably smell the chemical changes in your body." From the treatments, David had suspected as much. Maya's demeanor had shifted from her usual playful energy to something more protective and melancholy. She would often stand at the front of her enclosure, trunk extended toward David's trailer, as if keeping watch over him. As David's condition deteriorated, the circus faced a difficult decision. The fall season was approaching, and they needed consistency in their performances. David could no longer handle the physical demands of training and performing with Maya. The decision was made to bring in Elena Rodriguez, an experienced elephant trainer from another circus. Elena was skilled and kind, but Maya's reaction to the change was immediate and concerning. The elephant became listless during training, performing her routines mechanically without the joy and enthusiasm that had made her performances special. She's grieving, Elena told the circus manager after her first week working with Maya. I've seen this before when elephants lose their primary caretaker. She's not aggressive or uncooperative, but she's definitely depressed, David continued. To visit Maya daily, the visits became shorter as the strength faded. Maya seemed to understand that something fundamental was changing. She would rest her head against David's chest for long periods, her breathing synchronized with his. As if trying to share her strength with him, the circus was scheduled to travel to Tampa, Florida, for a month-long engagement. David's oncologist strongly advised against making the trip. His condition was deteriorating rapidly, and he needed to be near specialized medical facilities for the first time in 31 years. David and Maya would be separated by more than a few hundred yards. The day Maya's transport truck pulled away from the hospital parking lot in Baltimore was the hardest of David's life. He watched from his hospital room window as the convoy of circus vehicles disappeared into traffic, taking Maya to Tampa while he remained behind for intensive treatment. Maya's distress was immediate and severe. Elena reported that the elephant barely ate for the first 3 days in Tampa. She would stand at the entrance to her enclosure, trunk extended toward the north, as if sensing the direction David had gone. She keeps looking for him, Elena told the circus manager during an emergency conference call. I've tried everything, extra training sessions, favorite treats, even bringing in other animals for company. Nothing works. She's not sleeping, barely eating, and her performance yesterday was completely lackluster. Dr. Harrison, the circus veterinarian, was called in to examine Maya. Physically, she appeared healthy, but her behavior indicated severe psychological distress. In elephants, this could quickly become a serious medical issue. Meanwhile, in Baltimore, David was fighting his own battle. The cancer had spread more aggressively than anyone had anticipated. The treatments that had initially slowed the tumor's growth were no longer effective. Dr. Williams had to have another difficult conversation with David about transitioning to palliative care. We're looking at weeks now, not months, she told him gently. I think it's time to consider what matters most to you in the time you have left. David's answer was immediate. I need to see Maya. Dr. Williams understood the request, but the logistics were complex. David was too ill to travel to Tampa, and transporting a circus elephant to Baltimore was practically impossible. The hospital had no facilities for such a visit, and the legal and insurance complications would be overwhelming. I know how important this is to you, Dr. Williams said. Let me see what we can arrange. The story of David and Maya's separation began to spread through the hospital staff. Nurses, doctors, and administrators had never encountered a situation quite like this. A man dying of cancer whose closest companion was a circus elephant, and both were suffering from their forced separation. Dr. Williams reached out to the circus management, explaining David's condition and prognosis. The response was immediate and heartfelt. They wanted to help, but bringing Maya to Baltimore presented insurmountable obstacles. What if we brought David to Tampa, suggested Margaret Chen, the circus's general manager. We could arrange for medical support here, and he could spend his final days with Maya. But David's condition was deteriorating too rapidly for travel. He required specialized equipment and round-the-clock medical monitoring that couldn't be replicated at the circus. As word of the situation spread, an unexpected network of support began to emerge. Animal rights activists, who had often been critical of the circus, reached out offering help. Wildlife sanctuaries volunteered resources. Even zoos in the Baltimore area offered to host a visit, though none had the appropriate facilities for Maya's size and needs. Dr. Patricia Moss, a veterinary behaviorist at the National Zoo, became involved in the discussions. She'd studied elephant cognition and emotional intelligence for over 20 years. Elephants form bonds that are similar to human family relationships. She explained that the growing team of people trying to find a solution to the distress that both David and Maya are experiencing is real and profound. Elephants have been known to travel vast distances to visit dying family members in the wild. The more Dr. Moss learned about David and Maya's relationship, the more convinced she became that a reunion was not just emotionally important, but potentially critical for Maya's long-term psychological health. If Maya doesn't get to say goodbye, Dr. Moss warned, she could develop severe behavioral problems that last 4 years. Elephants never forget, and they grieve deeply. In Tampa, Maya's condition continued to deteriorate. She had now gone a full week eating less than half her normal food intake. Her performances were mechanical and lifeless, most concerning to Dr. Harrison. She had started exhibiting stereotypic behaviors, repetitive movements that indicated severe psychological stress. Maya would sway back and forth for hours, a behavior never seen in her 3 decades of life. She would also touch the same spot on her enclosure wall repeatedly with her trunk, over and over again until the skin was raw. This is serious, Dr. Harrison told Elena and the circus management. Elephants can develop obsessive behaviors that become impossible to break. if we don't address her psychological state soon, she could harm herself. Elena had worked with elephants for 15 years, but she'd never seen distress quite like Maya's. The elephant would respond to basic commands during training, but there was no engagement, no connection. It was as if Maya was going through the motions while her mind was elsewhere. "She's not seeing me," Elena reported. "When I give her commands, she follows them. But she's not present. It's like she's sleepwalking." The circus's evening performances were suffering. Audiences could sense that something was wrong with Maya. The elephant's usual charisma and playful interaction with the crowd had been replaced by a robotic compliance. That made everyone uncomfortable. Dr. Moss traveled to Tampa to observe Maya firsthand. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. Maya was exhibiting all the signs of severe depression and anxiety that she documented in elephants who had lost family members. "She's looking for him," Dr. Moss observed as she watched Maya repeatedly position herself at the northern edge of her enclosure. Elephants have an incredible sense of direction and can navigate over vast distances. She knows which direction David is, and she's oriented toward him. The breakthrough in understanding came when Dr. Moss noticed Maya's behavior. During phone calls, whenever Elena or the circus management would call Baltimore to check on David's condition, Maya would become more alert, moving closer to whoever was speaking on the phone. She recognized his voices associated with David. Dr. Moss realized she's trying to gather information about him through any means available. Dr. Moss suggested an experiment. With David's permission, they would put him on speakerphone during one of Maya's training sessions. The result was immediate and dramatic. The moment David's voice came through the phone speakers, Maya stopped her repetitive swaying and moved directly toward the sound. She began vocalizing low rumbling sounds that Elena had never heard from her before. "Maya, girl." David's weak voice came through the phone. "I know you're there. I miss you too." Maya's response was unmistakable. She extended her trunk toward the phone and made soft, chirping sounds that were clearly directed at David's voice. For the first time in a week, she seemed fully present and engaged. The phone calls became a daily ritual, every morning and evening. David would speak to Maya for 10 or 15 minutes. The elephant would position herself as close to the phone as possible and respond with vocalizations. That seemed to be part of a complex conversation. But while the phone calls provided temporary comfort, Maya's overall condition didn't improve. If anything, the calls seemed to intensify her longing. After each conversation, she would become more agitated, pacing and looking toward the north. Dr. Harrison was becoming increasingly concerned about Maya's physical health. The elephant had lost over 800 pounds, and her immune system was compromised by stress. More troubling, she was showing signs of learned helplessness, a psychological condition where animals stop trying to change their circumstances. "We're running out of time," Dr. Harrison warned the circus management. "If we can't reunite them somehow, we may lose both of them." The media attention began with a local Tampa newspaper story about the grieving elephant. A reporter had noticed Maya's unusual behavior during a performance and investigated the story behind it. Within days, the story of David and Maya's forced separation had gone viral. #ReuniteThemNo began trending on social media. Animal rights groups, who had historically opposed circuses, found themselves advocating for Maya's emotional well-being. The story touched people around the world. The dying man and his elephant companion, separated by circumstances beyond their control. Dr. Williams found herself fielding calls from reporters, animal welfare organizations, and even government officials. The hospital administration was initially overwhelmed by the attention, but they quickly realized they had an opportunity to demonstrate compassion in a unique situation. "What would it take to bring Maya to Baltimore?" Dr. Williams asked during a meeting with hospital administrators, city officials, and transportation experts. The challenges were immense. Maya would need to travel 800 miles in a specialized transport vehicle. The hospital had no facilities for housing an elephant, even temporarily. Legal permits would be required from multiple states and cities. Insurance companies would need to approve unprecedented coverage, but public pressure was mounting, and influential people were getting involved. The governor of Maryland personally called the hospital to offer state resources. A billionaire animal lover offered to fund the entire operation. Transportation companies volunteered specialized equipment. Dr. Sarah Jensen, a veterinary anesthesiologist, joined the planning team. Her expertise would be crucial for safely managing Maya's stress during the journey and potential medical needs. During the visit, the transport itself will be traumatic for her, Dr. Jensen warned. Elephants don't travel well under stress, and she's already in a compromised psychological state. We'll need to have medical support throughout the journey. The logistics team identified a route that would minimize travel time and maximize safety. The Maryland Department of Transportation agreed to provide police escorts and clear traffic. Rest stops were planned every 2 hours to check on Maya's condition. The most complex challenge was creating a space at the hospital where Maya and David could meet safely. The hospital's loading dock was large enough to accommodate Maya's transport vehicle, but it would need to be converted into a temporary elephant-safe environment. Engineers calculated weight limits, veterinarians designed safety protocols, and hospital staff prepared for a visit unlike anything in medical history. The entire operation would need to be completed within a 6-hour window to minimize Maya's stress and accommodate David's limited energy. But just as the plans were taking shape, David's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. Dr. Williams had seen the pattern before in terminal cancer patients, a sudden acceleration in symptoms that indicated the end was very near. David's vital signs became unstable, and he required increased oxygen support. Most concerning, he was conscious for only brief periods. We're looking at days now, not weeks. Dr. Williams told the planning team during an emergency meeting, "If we're going to do this reunion, it has to happen immediately." The news sent shockwaves through the network of people working to reunite David and Maya. In Tampa, Maya seemed to sense the urgency. Her agitation increased, and she began refusing food entirely. Elena made the difficult decision to stop Maya's performances. The elephant was in no condition to work, and audiences were becoming upset by her obvious distress. "She knows," Elena told Dr. Moss during a late-night phone call. "I can't explain how, but she knows he's dying." Her behavior has become desperate. The media attention intensified as word spread about David's deteriorating condition. #SavEdavidame became a global trending topic. Messages of support poured in from around the world. Children drew pictures of elephants and sent them to the hospital. Celebrities shared the story with their millions of followers, but despite the public support and the team of experts working around the clock, the logistics of transporting Maya safely remained overwhelming. Every hour of delay decreased the chances that David would be conscious for their reunion. Dr. Williams made the difficult decision to be honest with David during one of his lucid moments. "We're trying to bring Maya to you," she told him, "but there are so many complications. I don't know if we can make it happen in time." David's response was barely audible, but clear: "Tell her I love her." That night, as the medical team worked to keep David stable and the logistics team frantically tried to overcome the remaining obstacles, Maya made a decision that would shock everyone. At 3:17 a.m., the night security guard at the circus noticed something wrong with Maya's enclosure. The heavy steel gate that secured her area had been manipulated open. The locks that should have prevented her from leaving were somehow undone. Maya was gone. The security footage would later show exactly how Maya had escaped, though no one could fully explain her knowledge of the locking mechanisms using her trunk. With surgical precision, she had manipulated the complex series of latches and locks that secured her enclosure. The process took her nearly 2 hours of careful work. By 4 a.m., Maya was walking through the deserted streets of Tampa, moving with purpose toward the northeast. Her massive form was captured by traffic cameras and security systems throughout the city, creating a trail that emergency responders would later follow. The first 911 call came at 4:23 a.m. from a security guard at a shopping center. "There's an elephant walking through our parking lot," he reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. "It's heading toward the interstate." Within minutes, Tampa police, animal control, and the circus emergency team were mobilized. But Maya had a significant head start, and she was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Harrison arrived at the circus grounds to find chaos. Maya's enclosure was intact except for the open gate. There were no signs of damage or struggle. She had simply let herself out and walked away. How did she know how to operate those locks? Ellen asked, staring at the complex mechanism that required specific movements in a precise sequence. Dr. Harrison had worked with Maya for years, but even he was amazed by what she had accomplished. Elephants are incredibly intelligent and observant. She'd watched us secure that gate thousands of times. She must have memorized the process. But the more pressing question was where Maya was going. The tracking team followed her route through traffic camera footage and witness reports. Her path was remarkably direct, avoiding major obstacles and consistently heading northeast. Dr. Moss, who had been sleeping at a Tampa hotel, was awakened by the emergency call. When she learned about Maya's route, her expertise in elephant behavior provided a stunning insight. "She's heading to Baltimore," Dr. Moss told the emergency team. "Elephants can navigate over vast distances using landmarks, smells, and even magnetic fields. She knows where David is, and she's going to him." The realization sent shock waves through everyone involved in the rescue effort. Maya wasn't randomly wandering, she was on a mission. As dawn broke, Maya had covered nearly 12 miles. She had successfully navigated through urban areas, avoiding major highways while maintaining her northeastern trajectory. Helicopter footage showed her walking steadily along back roads, her massive form creating a surreal sight in the suburban landscape. The story exploded across social media. #Maya's coming home spread around the world. News helicopters joined the police helicopters tracking her progress. The image of a lone elephant walking purposefully through American suburbs became iconic. But the situation was also dangerous. Maya was a massive wild animal loose in populated areas. While she had shown no aggression, her size alone made her a potential hazard to vehicles and bystanders. Dr. Harrison and Elena joined the pursuit team, following Maya in a convoy that included veterinarians, animal control officers, and circus staff. Their goal was to safely capture Maya and return her to the circus, but she remained ahead of them, somehow avoiding the roads where they expected to intercept her. "She's avoiding us," Elena observed as Maya once again disappeared from view before their team could reach her location. "She knows we'll try to stop her." By noon, Maya had covered over 30 miles. The national media had picked up the story, and millions of people were following her progress online. Support for Maya was overwhelming. People wanted her to reach David. But in Baltimore, David's condition had become critical. Dr. Williams called Dr. Harrison with devastating news. David had slipped into a coma. His vital signs were failing, and they were unsure if he would regain consciousness. The news reached the Maya tracking team as the elephant continued her relentless march toward Baltimore. She had now been walking for over 12 hours, covering nearly 50 miles. Veterinary experts were amazed by her stamina and determination. We need to make a decision, Dr. Harrison told the emergency coordination team. Do we continue trying to capture Maya, or do we help her reach David? The question sparked intense debate. From a safety standpoint, Maya needed to be contained. Before someone was hurt, from a legal standpoint, she was valuable circus property that needed to be protected, but from a humanitarian standpoint, she was a grieving family member trying to reach her dying companion. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Governor Patricia Walsh of Maryland called the circus management directly. Bring her here. The governor said, we'll provide state police escorts and clear the highways. If this elephant wants to say goodbye to her friend, we're going to make it happen. The decision transformed the pursuit from a capture operation into an escort mission. Police units positioned themselves along Maya's route, clearing traffic and ensuring public safety while allowing her to continue. Dr. Moss joined the convoy following Maya. Amazed by what she was witnessing, this is unprecedented in elephant behavior research, she told reporters via phone from the chase vehicle. The navigational ability she's demonstrating, combined with the emotional motivation, is beyond anything we've documented before. Maya seemed to sense the change in the humans following her. When police cars began escorting rather than blocking her path, her pace increased. She was now moving at nearly 4 miles per hour, an impressive speed for an elephant traveling over such distances. Social media exploded with support. Hashtag clear the road for Maya became a rallying cry. People lined the highways to witness Maya's journey, holding signs of encouragement and creating a spontaneous parade of support. But the clock was ticking. Baltimore was still over 700 miles away, and David's medical team wasn't sure he would survive another night. Dr. Jensen, the veterinary anesthesiologist, made a controversial suggestion. What if we meet her halfway? We could transport David to a location where Maya can reach him sooner. The idea was medically risky. Moving David in his condition could be fatal. But leaving him in Baltimore while Maya walked for 3 more days might mean they would never see each other again. Dr. Williams consulted with David's family, his elderly sister in California, who had been his only human relative. Her response was immediate. David would want to take the risk. Maya means everything to him. The decision was made to transport David to a veterinary facility in Virginia, approximately 400 miles south of Baltimore and directly on Maya's projected route. The facility had the medical equipment needed to keep David stable and the space necessary for Maya's visit. His medical teams prepared David for transport. Maya continued her incredible journey. She had now been walking for over 18 hours, covering more than 60 miles. Veterinary experts following her were concerned about dehydration and exhaustion. But Maya showed no signs of stopping. The reunion was now just hours away. The Virginia Veterinary Medical Center had never hosted a gathering quite like this. Located on 50 acres outside Richmond, the facility normally treated horses and farm animals. But when they learned about Maya and David's story, they immediately volunteered to host the reunion. Dr. Michael Torres, the facility's director, worked through the night to prepare. A large covered arena was converted into a medical suite for David, complete with all the monitoring equipment needed to keep him stable. The adjacent paddock was reinforced and secured to safely contain Maya. David arrived by medical helicopter just as dawn was breaking on Maya's second day of walking. He was unconscious but stable, surrounded by a medical team led by Dr. Williams. The helicopter landing drew crowds of supporters who had been following the story. Maya was now less than 30 miles away, still walking steadily toward the facility. Drone footage showed her crossing rural Virginia farmland, her massive form moving purposefully through fields and along country roads. Dr. Harrison and Elena had given up trying to intercept Maya. Instead, they focused on preparing for her arrival. A team of veterinarians stood ready to examine her for injuries or exhaustion. Tranquilizer equipment was available if needed, though everyone hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Dr. Moss positioned herself where she could observe Maya's behavior. During the reunion, as a researcher, she knew she was about to witness something unprecedented in human-animal relationship studies. At 2:30 p.m., Maya crested a hill overlooking the veterinary center. She stopped for the first time in nearly 2 days, her trunk extended high in the air. Gathering sense, after a moment, she began moving faster, her pace increasing to nearly 6 miles per hour. She knows he's here, Dr. Moss observed, watching. Maya's body language changed dramatically. Her entire demeanor has shifted. She's not just walking anymore, she's hurrying. Maya reached the facility's gates at 3:15 p.m. The security barriers had been removed and she walked directly into the main courtyard. For the first time since her escape, she stopped moving and began vocalizing deep, rumbling calls that could be heard for miles. Dr. Williams made the decision to bring David outside. Using a specialized medical transport bed, they moved him to the covered arena where Maya could see him. The medical equipment followed, maintaining his life support systems. Maya's reaction to seeing David was immediate and profound. She approached the barriers separating them and extended her trunk toward his motionless form. Her vocalizations became softer, more intimate, the same sounds she had made during their phone conversations. Dr. Moss, documenting every moment, was moved to tears. She's greeting him exactly the way she would greet a family member after a long separation. This is elephant behavior we typically only see in the wild between relatives. The medical team lowered the barriers enough for Maya to touch David with her trunk. The moment of contact was electric. Maya gently placed her trunk on David's chest, and his vital signs immediately stabilized. Even more remarkably, David's eyes opened. David's return to consciousness was brief but profound. His eyes focused on Maya's massive form standing over him, her trunk resting gently on his chest. A smile spread across his face, the first genuine expression of joy the medical team had seen from him in weeks. "Maya, girl," he whispered, his voice barely audible but filled with love, "you found me." Maya's response was a soft rumbling sound that seemed to come from deep within her chest. She adjusted her trunk placement, moving it to touch David's face with incredible gentleness. For such a massive creature, her touch was as delicate as a butterfly landing. Dr. Williams monitored David's vital signs with amazement. His heart rate, which had been dangerously irregular, stabilized completely. His blood pressure normalized. Most remarkably, his brain activity, as measured by portable EEG equipment, showed patterns of alertness and recognition that hadn't been seen in days. The medical literature has documented cases where emotional connections can temporarily override physical decline, Dr. Williams explained to the gathered media. But I've never seen anything this dramatic. Maya seemed to understand that David was gravely ill. Her usual playful energy was replaced by a careful, protective stance. She positioned herself so that her massive body shielded David from the wind and provided shade. Her breathing synchronized with his, creating a rhythm that seemed to calm them both. Dr. Harrison examined Maya and was amazed by her condition. Despite walking over 140 miles in 36 hours, she showed minimal signs of exhaustion. Her feet, which should have been severely damaged by the journey on asphalt and concrete, were surprisingly intact. It's as if she was sustained by pure determination, Dr. Harrison told the media. Physically, this journey should have been impossible for a circus elephant, but somehow, she made it. David remained conscious for nearly 2 hours, the longest period of alertness he'd experienced in days. He spoke softly to Maya, their conversation a mixture of words and sounds that seemed to have meaning only to them. "She's been worried about you," Elena told David as she joined them in the arena. "She stopped eating, stopped performing, all she wanted was to get back to you." David's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, girl. I didn't want to leave you." Maya seemed to understand. She made soft vocalizations that sounded almost like reassurance, as if she were comforting David rather than the other way around. As the afternoon progressed, David's strength began to fade, but he remained conscious longer than anyone had expected. Sustained by Maya's presence, the elephant never moved from her protective position, maintaining physical contact with her trunk while keeping watch over the gathering crowd. Dr. Moss documented behaviors she had never seen in captive elephants. Maya's protective stance, her gentle vocalizations, and her obvious emotional connection to David's condition were more sophisticated than anything in the scientific literature. "She understands that he's dying," Dr. Moss observed. "In the wild, elephants engage in complex grieving behaviors when family members are ill or dying." Maya is displaying the same instincts with David. As evening approached, David's consciousness began to fade again, but before he slipped back into a coma, he managed one final conversation with Maya. "You've been such a good girl," he whispered, his hand reaching up to touch her trunk. "You're going to be okay. They'll take care of you." Maya's response was a low, mournful sound that brought tears to everyone present. She seemed to understand that this was goodbye. As David lapsed back into unconsciousness, Maya began a vigil that would last through the night. She positioned herself as close to his medical bed as safety allowed and remained motionless, her trunk occasionally reaching out to touch him gently. The medical team had expected to transport David back to Baltimore after the reunion, but his condition had stabilized so dramatically that Dr. Williams decided to keep him at the veterinary facility. Maya's presence seemed to be providing a comfort that no medical intervention could match. Word of the reunion had spread around the world. The image of the massive elephant standing guard over her dying friend became one of the most shared photographs in social media history. #MyOnDavid trended globally as people shared their own stories of profound human-animal bonds. Dr. Moss set up equipment to monitor both David's and Maya's behavior throughout the night. What she observed challenged everything she thought she knew about elephant cognition and emotional intelligence. Maya's breathing remained synchronized with David's throughout the night. When his breathing became labored, Maya would gently adjust her trunk placement, as if trying to comfort him. When medical alarms indicated changes in his condition, Maya would respond before the human medical team, somehow sensing the changes before the machines detected them. "She's acting as an early warning system," Dr. Williams observed with amazement. "She's detecting changes in his condition faster than our monitoring equipment." The vigil attracted thousands of visitors. People drove from hundreds of miles away to witness the elephant's devotion. Local restaurants donated food for the crowds. Hotels offered free rooms to people who had traveled to be part of the historic gathering. But Maya paid no attention to the crowds. Her focus remained entirely on David, her massive presence a constant source of comfort in his final hours. As dawn broke on the third day, David's breathing became increasingly labored. Dr. Williams prepared the family for the inevitable, but Maya seemed to sense what was coming before any human did. The elephant's vocalizations changed, becoming deeper and more mournful. She positioned her trunk directly over David's heart, as if trying to share her strength with him one final time. At 6:47 a.m., with Maya's trunk resting gently on his chest, David Chen took his final breath. Maya's reaction to David's death was immediate and profound. The moment his breathing stopped, she raised her trunk high into the air and let out a sound unlike anything the veterinary team had ever heard. It was a deep, mournful call that seemed to echo across the entire facility and beyond.